32% of all students miss out on the college experience due to its shared expense. That's about 650 million dreams left unfulfilled, and those many potential Einsteins, Stephen Hawking, and Adam Smiths who could potentially revolutionize society. What is our stance in this debate? Very simply, governments across the world should put into place legislation to enforce income share agreements as the primary and mandatory mechanism for students to pay for their education, wherein instead of paying a hefty admission fee, a part of their income would be directed towards the university once they're gainfully employed. I'm going to be doing 3 things in my speech today. 1. Setting up policy from side proposition. 2. Bringing you a moral and a practical argument, and lastly show you that even in our worst case we still take this debate. On to our model then. 3 things. A. The mandate would cover all universities across the world that would be obligated by the law to follow it. Each university would set up a policy detailing the percentage of income as payback to the loan and the time period of payback, based on some certain broad guidelines specified by the government to prevent exploitation. Secondly, the specifics of the terms and conditions of the income share agreement would vary according to the perceived prestige and the quality of education as well as the credibility of the university. Lastly, the premise behind the income share agreement is that borrowers who are in financially uncomfortable situation, which looks like being unemployed or not having a stable job or being paid less than a certain basic amount each month, are not expected to pay. Moving on to my constructives, 2 questions in this debate. A, on how this is morally acceptable. B, how this leads to the overall improvement in the quality of education. Firstly, then, on how this democratizes education. We live in a capitalist society where being good just isn't enough. It doesn't matter if you're the most hardworking, talented, or even the brightest candidate for a post, you will still be at a disadvantage to someone who has more money. The same is the case for college admissions. Despite getting into some of the most exclusive universities in the world, students are unable to admit themselves due to the exorbitant fee. Scholarships are few and far between, and financial aid is given selectively. This clearly leads to an inequitable access to education and an infringement of the fundamental right to education. This is particularly pernicious as this prevents students from being able to capitalize on their talents and abilities and potentially contributing to the economic development of the country as well as building a better life for themselves. Thus, we have fewer innovations, geniuses, and change makers. By making education more inclusive, we will be fueling the economy, providing students from all backgrounds an equal opportunity to use the resources available to them to the best of their abilities. Now, how does our policy solve this problem? By implementing the income share agreement, we give all students and access to education contingent on them paying a percentage of their income in the future. Admissions to universities can now be based solely on merit and not on their financial status. This seems extremely lucrative as students now have an opportunity to both A, gain access to premier universities, and B, consequently get better jobs, as opposed to not being able to attend these universities, as a result of which they don't get as good a job. Why is this better than present means of financial aid? Most people spend years of their life repaying their college loans. The main reason for this is that student loans, the terms and conditions of student loans are extremely strict and do not offer the same flexibility that income share agreements do. With income share agreements, students need not worry about paying back the loan during unemployment or financially strained situations. Further, since it's a percentage of their income and not a fixed fee, it is also economically feasible for them. Without this policy, we see 2 particularly dangerous situations. 1. Students who are not financially equipped to pay for college tuition fee even after taking loans, in which cases they are unable to attend colleges. And B, students who are not very well off but still scrape together the last of their earnings to the family's savings to go to college, thereby compromising on funds for healthcare, investment, or even an emergency in general, placing the entire family on thin ice. On to the second question then. How does this improve the overall standard of education? Number 1, it incentivizes universities to improve opportunities available to students. Income share agreements help create a virtuous cycle in society. With income share agreements, financial constraints are no longer a barrier and hence a much larger number of students get access to university education. Further, the quality of education offered by universities is better too. The better jobs their students get, the more a university earns. This ensures that universities are personally invested in a student's success and will give them the best possible opportunities to reach their goals. This could look like better campus placement opportunities and better resources, as well as a better quality of education. Factoring in the increased participation due to income share agreements, a much larger percentage of the people are gainfully employed and can contribute to the development of the society as a whole. Economically, this makes sense as you pay only for what you get. Unlike materialistic quantities, when you pay for an education, you can't tangibly evaluate if you get your money's worth. The closest metric we have for this is the kind of job you go on to get, which would be a direct result of the educational opportunities provided to you by a university. If a student wasn't able to benefit from the education gained at the university, they shouldn't be obligated to pay for it. Finally, then, on why such a policy should be mandated and not be made optional. At the point at which such a policy becomes optional, universities tend to become exclusive. Universities that didn't take up this policy are only available to the extremely rich. Since they charge such a high amount as a tuition fee, they can use this money to upgrade their infrastructure and educational resources to a much greater extent than others. This makes such universities selective and is not a level playing field, as the rich have access to a better quality of education. Now, what do we look like in our worst case? Even if we take side opposition at their best, we still take this debate as we were able to show you A, that democratizing education is the only way to ensure equitable access. In any other counterfactual, monetary differences would create inequality. And 2, this is the most viable alternative to any financial aid. So even if you are unable to find a job, you are not at a loss. And because we were able to prove to you that we help in mitigating the pain of the most vulnerable, at the same time ensure societal development, we take this debate so proud to propose.